Welcome to the STARS webinar. My name is David Earn. I'm Director of Programs and Communication at STARS. We have over 50 participants joining today's webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Today we talk with Yinglan TAN about Southeast Asia's tech and startup ecosystem. Yinglan is the founding managing partner and CEO of Insignia Ventures Partners. Founded in 2017, Insignia Ventures Partners is an early-stage technology venture fund focusing on Southeast Asia. It manages more than $350 million from sovereign wealth funds, foundations, university endowments, and family offices. Insignia Ventures Partners is the recipient of two back-to-back VC Deal of Year awards for PayFast in 2019 and Caro in 2018. And its portfolio includes many other technology leaders in Southeast Asia. Yinglan also serves on the Singapore government's pro-enterprise panel, and he is a member of the board of Hwa Chong Institution and the STARS International Board. Hi Yinglan, good to see you, and thank you for speaking in this webinar.
Hi David, always a pleasure to speak to the STARS participants.
We now have 30 minutes to discuss with Yinglan. I will take the privilege to ask the first couple of questions. In the meantime, if you have any questions for Yinglan, please use the Q&A feature below to type in your question. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. Yinglan, from your point of view as an investor, how is COVID-19 impacting Southeast Asia's tech and startup ecosystem? Where are the biggest pain points, so to say?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer this question is maybe a Chinese word, which means it's called Wei Ji. In simple terms, it means in the crisis, there's always opportunity. And what we have done, in our portfolio is that, hey, about 80% of our portfolio got negatively impacted initially, but we saw, them quickly adjust their strategies. And now the ratio is actually rebounded to 70% are now either back to their pre-COVID levels or is even exceeding that. Another 20%, to our surprise, have actually benefited quite a bit from the crisis, especially those in the online education space. I have some prepared material which I can go through later. I mean, one of the best performing stock in the world is actually in Southeast Asia called C, which is a combination of mini Tencent and Alibaba for Southeast Asia. And their stock price has grown about 8.8 times in the past 18 months. One of our portfolio company in the online education space have spiked about 15 times in the past 3 months. So I think never waste a good crisis. There's a cliche, but I think one of the key takeaways is that we have a few we are in interesting times where this is an unprecedented episode in history. And I always tell my founders to use two ways to view the situation. One through a microscope and one through a telescope, to think both long-term and short-term, and to also not be too focused on the short-term to miss out on opportunities in the horizon. Yeah, so that's my sort of quick response to your question, David.
For an outsider like me, it seems that Southeast Asia's companies in the last couple of years have been fueled by billions and billions of dollars in venture capital from very big investors like SoftBank, for instance. Do you think this time of easy money is now over and COVID-19 acts as kind of a reality check for investors?
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I have some materials which I can use to answer this question, because it actually is quite a good answer to your question on the days of easy money. So let me just share my screen, if I may. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, David, can you see my screen?
It's coming. Just hold on a second. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Let me start with this image that may be of interest. This is actually the largest floating market in Indonesia. Is somewhere located in Kalimantan at Loic Bintan. Well, this was obviously taken before pre-COVID, but there's 4 key takeaways here, right? I think the first point is that the level of digitalization and opportunity of the digital economy in Southeast Asia is very real. If you were to go to this market 10 years ago, it was all in cash. But when you go there now, it's actually, lots of people use Gojek, GrabPay, even our portfolio company PayFast to make transactions. And all of them have a smartphone, right? But the funny thing is like none of them has a bank account. So all the tech companies are actually infiltrating the rural economy much faster than the traditional banks. The second point is that the farmers who actually sell fruits in this floating market, they work very hard, but they don't make a lot of money because the people who leases out the boats actually they take a big commission. The intermediaries take a fat chunk of the margins. So what we will see here is a great opportunity to be the disintermediary for some of these traditional sectors. I can share a few of our companies that's doing that. The third point here is actually the response to your question, which is the fact that the floating market, a lot of the activity happens at 6:30, like it ends about 12. So what happens is that the early birds get the fresh fruits, and you see at 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock, you see the Japanese, you see the Chinese investors, Chinese tourists come, and they get some of the like less fresh fruits. And the same analogy is that for the investment circle, right? So you see, you have in an emerging market for technology, you have to be early. Otherwise, you risk being like some Japanese investors, and you come in and you end up with maybe fruits which are companies which are less good, or maybe in this case fruits which are less fresh. So I think this is a sort of a backhanded way of answering your question, David, on I would say exuberant nature of Southeast Asia tech in the past few years. Indeed, there has been influx of capital from SoftBank, from Tencent, from Alibaba, and there was a lull obviously during COVID. But although we do see that the volume going forward is actually likely to be much higher, because with the trade war, right, happening, India also having some regulatory challenges for foreign investors, I think Southeast Asia is going to attract a lot of capital and talent. And I think this is best illustrated by this fact here, right? I mean, you look at the stock price of C, they have actually trounced the FAANGS over the past 18 months. They have done very well, and that's one illustration of the opportunity in Southeast Asia. I compare this to what we saw in China, in the past 10 years, right? I wrote a book about 10 years ago called Chinovation 1.0, and actually our second book published by Insignia is coming out called ASEANovation. I won't go through the whole spiel on this, but I think there are 5 key points that we see. I guess the innovation and in Southeast Asia, disintermediation, distribution, data on demand, and design for individual. And I can go into this at greater detail if you like, David.
So as you mentioned, as scrutiny from investors is growing, do you think that as a result, startups will have to transition from the growth at any cost kind of philosophy of the past couple of years to moving more towards finding paths to profit earlier?
Yeah, you're right. I think gone are the days where it's growth at all costs. I think the focus on unit economics, the focus on path to profitability is of, I wouldn't say paramount importance, but it's I think it's at the heart of most board meetings that I attend. But having said that, I think there is never a good time to hire. There's never a better time to hire talent than now, right? Because resources are much cheaper, rent is cheaper, talent which used to be previously good company is now available, And I think, there's a sort of a dichotomy, right? The companies that won't make it and the companies that are thriving. And these companies tend to receive a disproportionate share of capital. So we think that sort of moderate growth with also with some control of unit economics, I think compared to the heady days of the past, I think that's the more sustainable way to grow.
Another theme you already mentioned is the pandemic growth sector, which has emerged since the outbreak. Looking at Southeast Asia in particular, which sectors do you see where COVID-19 is accelerating innovation and growth?
Yeah, so I can use one or two slides to illustrate, if you don't mind. I'll just share my screen again. Huh?
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just mentioning that one of the big themes that we see is actually digital banking, because I think now, before COVID, going to the bank has been a chore, right? Millennials actually want to process all of their banking functions on the phone, right? So we have a company called PayFast that is in Indonesia that has 100,000 agents that essentially acts as a digital bank, and we have a same thesis in Philippines as well. So I think the rise of digital bank, I think, is going to be very real, accelerated by COVID. And digitalization is actually accelerating in all industries. We always say that the biggest, the best chief digitalization officer is actually COVID itself, rather than any actual person, because it has drove a lot of industry to, digitize much faster than others. The other sector that we see that is rising very fast, as I mentioned, is online education. We have a very interesting company in Indonesia called Pahamify, as I mentioned. It used to be the case where my daughter would go to school and take an exam. Now she's actually taking an exam at home, and there's a tripod that's set up behind her to make sure that it's not cheating. Where we had, like in Singapore, we had a 2-month circuit breaker. All the classes were online, but actually, we are seeing a lot of innovation in the space of online education. We also see a lot of interesting, unexpected verticals that benefited from this as well. So, for example, this B2B marketplaces. So we found that we have a company called Easy. They essentially help to we thought that the business would get a big hit during COVID, but it turns out that, hey, there were a lot of requests for face masks, PPE, and other COVID-related supplies, and the business boom. I would say the other stuff that is not here on the slides are things like cybersecurity. I think we saw as we are using more and more Zoom-like features, right? Or webinars, doing webinars. I think cybersecurity is on the forefront of all enterprise concerns. So that's another big area. And yeah, I think these are the key areas that I would say that are benefiting from COVID. Obviously, the obvious sectors that have been hurt is travel. Companies like Airbnb, ride-sharing companies, hospitalities. But even in these sectors, we are starting to see some unusual innovation that has been emerging. So I would say that it matters to the sector, but I think the true innovators find truly ingenious ways to sort of pivot and craft a new business model for themselves. So, for example, I mean, we see a lot of restaurants actually start to go online, and the food delivery folks, have spiked to an all-time high, and some of the offline restaurants are now internet-only models, and we see this trend to actually not subside even when the circuit breaker in Singapore was ended.
With Insignia Venture Partners, you won the Venture Capital Deal of Year twice, in 2018 with Caro and 2019 with PayFast. You already mentioned PayFast, but can you probably give us a short summary, like what was the journey for you as an investor with Caro and PayFast, and where do the companies stand today?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So I'll just give a quick explanation of what these two companies do. So Caro is the largest car marketplace in Southeast Asia. And they also have branched into finance, like providing car insurance and car loans. They transact close to $1 billion in sales a year. During COVID, actually, they came out with a couple of innovative measures, right? So including virtual car tours, on video, and actually contactless, car purchases. And the most interesting one that they did was actually this car leasing program, because people maybe a bit afraid to take Grab and Uber, for example. So they would lease out the cars and you pay a monthly fee, and it's a great business model. It's a sort of software as a service almost. The other thing that we saw was that that as the economy worsens, people may not be able to afford new cars, or they may choose to save money and not buy new cars. So they will tend to buy second-hand cars, and that's where Caro is benefiting from the whole COVID situation. So that's Caro. Happy to have been a board member for the past few years. And PayFast, as I mentioned, is the largest bank for the unbanked in Indonesia. Very smart team that has figured out that, hey, 45% of Indonesia is unbanked. And for bank villager, villager in Indonesia to go to a proper bank branch may take hours. So they have devised a clever network of close to 100,000 agents who acts as bank branches, right? So those without a bank account will go to a PayFast agent, and he will give them cash, and the PayFast agent will have a bank account, and they will provide them with banking services, cash top up, insurance, loans, all sorts of functions. And I think what we learned was that if there's a product market fit in the emerging markets like Indonesia, products like Caro and PayFast really grow very fast, much faster than we had originally expected. And I think that's the opportunity for emerging markets, right? For areas, for geographies like Southeast Asia, for geographies like LATAM. I think you see a lot of pent-up demand for first world services that is not available.
So I'm wondering, you won in 2018, you won in 2019. With which Insignia deal do you hope to win the award in 2020?
Okay, David, you're too kind. I think one of the companies that we like a lot is this company called Flip in Indonesia. We think quite highly. So what they do is essentially they allow people to transfer cash from one bank to another, which in Indonesia costs 50 cents, which is like cost of a bowl of noodles to transfer money from bank A to bank B. They are connected to all the big major banks. They transact more than $1 billion in transaction volume. And we think that they are, also well positioned to be a digital bank for the bank population in Indonesia. So we like this company a lot. We also think that, a lot of logistic companies is one of the key enablers of commerce in Southeast Asia. So we have two companies here. One is Janio, which is a cross-border commerce company, and one is a company called Shipper, which is a last mile logistic company. Both are, I think, beneficiary of the rise in e-commerce during COVID. So we think quite highly about these three companies. We'll see what happens. But I think we don't become investors to win awards. I think we partner with companies to have them succeed, and stand by them in difficult times. So, but thanks for the encouragement.
We have a question from STARS alumnus John Dino. He's the co-founder and CEO of Aqualogics in Singapore. His question: what are the most interesting investment themes you see in Southeast Asia in the coming 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So one area that I mentioned earlier is digital banking. That is, I think, going to be on the rise with traditional banking sort of bogged down with assets and that sort of most of them are slow to digitize. So that's one area that we are very bullish on. We think food tech is also an interesting area that we are spending a lot of time on. We recently partnered with an alternative meat company called Growthwell in Singapore, along with Temasek. I think food security, supply of food, new models of food. I think food tech is interesting. We continue to be bullish about the commerce area and commerce enablers like logistics and payments, because I think that's just the nature of Southeast Asia, which is still in the middle class is still growing. Then I think the other few areas include direct to consumer brands. I think the middle class, as they get wealthier, their aspirational level goes up, and they no longer, they are more selective and picky about consumer brands, and that's where we think there will be some brands that will emerge from the market. Yeah, I think these are interesting, and of course digital marketplaces. We continue to be very bullish on them, like Autos and another company called PropZ, and another company called Pinhome, which are vertical marketplaces for property. These I think are the neighborhoods that we are particularly bullish on in Southeast Asia.
So generally speaking, then, for you to invest into a startup company, what criteria does the startup have to fulfill for you to get engaged?
Yeah, sure. No, I think it's fairly. It sounds easy, but actually it's difficult to execute. So most venture capital funds have a combination of three things, right? They look for, I mean, they may have different weightage, but they generally have a combination. They look for a combination of one of like two or three things. I think the first is always the team, right? The background of the team, there's founder market fit. I think that's one. The second one is a market, the size of the market, how fast is it growing, the level of competition in the market. The third one is usually product, right? And hence the word product market fit is there. When you sell the product on the market, is someone going to buy it? And some VC are more put a bigger weight on team. Some VCs put a bigger weightage on market, some on product. And even within team, there are different dimensions, right? So I think one is there's three dimensions within team, right? One is the IQ smart, right? Is the team smart and agile, the quantitative, all the things that you can test quantitatively. Then the second piece is, it's more qualitative. Is he unstoppable? Is he resilient? And the third one is actually whether, he has unshakable integrity. So I think the combination of team, market and product is usually what most VCs look at.
So you just mentioned the human factor. What do you consider the most important quality then for an entrepreneur to be successful?
I think there's only one. Is he unstoppable? That I think is. But I give you an example, right? A few entrepreneurs that one entrepreneur that I end up partnering with. I was I was waiting for my car, when I was at a science park. And the entrepreneur recognized me and said, "Hey, are you Yinglan? I would like to present my business idea to you." Just on the street. So I said, "I'm getting in the car. Why don't you come and talk to me in the car?" So he hopped into the car and we spent 30 minutes talking about his business. I didn't invest then, but I said, why don't you come with me to a lunch meeting I'm going at? There's other investors there. Maybe you can share your ideas with them. So what happened was that the folks at the lunch meeting ended up investing, and I ended up investing later. And now this business is worth close to $500 million. And when it was worth pretty much at a seed stage then. So I think that that shows that tenacity, and ability to never take no for an answer is an important trait for an entrepreneur.
In a recent Insignia newsletter, you wrote, and let me quote, "If the story of Southeast Asia's startup ecosystem were a long-running TV series," you know where this is going. We are still in the first season, where characters are still being established and earning the hearts of viewers. The anticipation with how these characters will develop over time has increased global viewership and ratings amidst difficult circumstances. That said, the first season is make or break for any TV show. With no clear end yet to the current crisis, the rapid adjustments startups have made at the onset have to be translated into endurance. So this region's performance goes well beyond the fundraising statistics." End quote. Can you elaborate on that? In your view, who are the key companies who have established themselves best so far? And how do you anticipate these companies and the region's performance as a whole to develop in the next few years?
Yeah, so I think you can count with like two hands, the number of unicorns in Southeast Asia, right? I mean, the normal names, Sea, Grab, Gojek, Tokopedia, Traveloka, Carousel, among others. But if you look at the data, that in this year alone, 17 Chinese companies IPO in the US, right? And these are real exits, right? I think in Southeast Asia case, C is obviously a shining star, but if you look at the number of real exits, either in terms of IPOs or M&As, there's still few and far between. That's why we mentioned that we are still in season one. I think there's the right ingredients, which is great talent, a big enough market, and we have good entrepreneurs, right? And good business models that seem to have some traction. But I think the real proof of the pudding is whether there are exits of large enough exits and consistent exits in this part of the world.
As you also serve on the Singapore government's pro-enterprise panel, I have a specific question about Singapore. I read a couple of days ago that Singapore just overtook the Netherlands to take top spot in KPMG's 2020 Autonomous Vehicles Readiness Index. So what did Singapore do to earn this pole position of being the place most ready for introducing autonomous vehicles? And how do you see the potential of AV in Singapore, or maybe Southeast Asia in general, in the next few years?
Yeah, I think Singapore has a luxury where we are a small country, and it's much easier to coordinate the different agencies, right? So in fact, the pro-enterprise panel was set up to address this exact problem. I mean, the running joke is that, if you have a snake that falls into a drain in Singapore, you have to crisscross 7 or 8 agencies. There will be the NParks, which is the agency that looks at the parks. There will be the LTA, because you have the snake have slid across the road. There will be the there will be the department that looks at drainage and sewage. There will be so there will be various agencies to coordinate. And in other countries, this takes some effort. But I think I guess what makes Singapore tick is the ability to quickly facilitate interactions across these multiple agencies very quickly. And AV is one of those areas that actually has you need a lot of agencies working together, coordinating to have a productive outcome. I think the other plus point about this is the depth of research talent here in A-Star and the universities. So that helps to have a fairly good melting pot of ideas and talent for this. I think these are the two main things. And of course, I think the government emphasis on research and the ability to put dollars behind that and funding behind that, I think definitely is a big boon as well.
We are already running out of time, but I would like to ask you one final question.
Sure.
In your career as a venture capitalist, what have been the 3 most important lessons learned from your personal experience of investing in tech startups?
Yeah, I think one is trust your gut, right? You may have a lot of data in front of you. You may have done a lot of reference checks on the market and person, but ultimately, I think what the gut tells you is pretty important. That's one. 2 is of course, taking into account point 1, the most important learning about venture capital is due diligence, right? You really need to do lots of work to verify business model, founders, whether a product there's a product market fit, and that takes a lot of effort. And 2 is the last one is ultimately we are in the service business, so you're as good as your last investments, and our job here is to make sure that entrepreneurs we choose to partner with or have we have the pleasure of being selected to partner with, we are there for them during the hard times, and when they succeed, it's their glory, and when they have a problem, we want to be their first call. So that's the the 3 quick learnings from the journey so far.
With that, I would like to thank you very much, Yinglan, for your time and for sharing your insights with us. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think the questions were great. Yeah, really appreciated the questions.
I would also like to thank all our alumni who participated in this webinar. In the next STARS webinar on 28th of August, exactly in a week from now, we will talk with STARS alumna Maria Astrid Lange. She is a US correspondent of Neue Zürcher Zeitung, about her experience of covering the US presidential election as a foreign correspondent. I hope to see you there. In the meantime, take care and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.